Hiroshi Fujiwara, as soon as I saw the name, I was like, oh, Japanese, I'm doing that because I'm here in Tokyo, Japan. I'm doing sneakers. It's a sneaker with a Japanese guy's name on it. I'm like, yeah, pretty interested in that. Had a look into the guy and found out a ton about him that I didn't already know. Maybe you guys know a lot more about him and his label Fragment Design. He's even appeared in some movies, Hollywood movies like Lost in Translation, but he's actually quite a sort of low-key guy and you don't really see him doing interviews and stuff like that. And he's coming out with a sort of stock of a previous shoe that he's done, but there's changes to it. Originally he did a city pack, I think it was 3 different colorways for the Dunk High line, and here we have one of them that's being retroed, but there are changes to it that we'll go through in today's video. The other 2 that haven't been retroed at the moment are rumored to be coming later this year, so it's something to look out for. But it's a great looking shoe. It reminds me of this right here. This is Jordan 1 Court Purple, and it's kind of interesting that I'm doing that because a couple of days ago I did this Dunk, and that reminded me of the Jordan 1 Pine Green. So it seems like there's a kind of crossover between the Jordan line and the Dunk line right now. And it might be accidental, might be deliberate, who knows, but it's certainly fire, and that's great for us to get into. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the shoe with you guys, show you some of the hits on it, talk about the differences between the OG and this retro, give you an insight into some of the beautiful materials that are going on the shoe and some of the clever little hits of branding in there as well. So without further ado, let's get into this and have a close-up look at the upcoming release of the Nike Dunk High Fragment Design Beijing. This is the Tokyo Bara 23 Secret Channel. Tokyo Bara 23 Secret Channelです。毎日アップするので、毎日見てくださいね。Every single day from Tokyo, Japan, I bring you content about upcoming sneaker releases, sneaker news, sneaker reviews, and today in the spotlight is one of those Japan-centric shoes from the Fragment design line from Hiroshi Fujiwara. Like I said, didn't know anything about his brand, didn't know anything about the guy himself until I did this video, but you know what? Every single day I bring you guys content on YouTube and I research every single video. It's not just me coming up and just blabbing my mouth and hoping for the best. So I got into had a look around. He's got his own Wikipedia page, but there's not really all that much on it. Talks about how he originally had a different label and then that sort of morphed and evolved into Fragment Design. And he talks about him having like friendships across the world, including icons like Eric Clapton, who he's made some guitars for. And he's also said, again, this is the research I've done, that he is the person who brought hip hop to Japan in the 80s. So he was over in the New York scene in the 80s. Hip hop was coming big there, and he brought the records from America to Japan, bringing hip hop here. He was a hip hop DJ because of that, and so he's considered to be the guy who brought hip hop to Japan. Kind of reminds me of how in the 60s, not that I was there, I know I'm old, but I'm not that old. But in the 60s, there was a whole sort of movement of records from the US to London, which spawned bands like the Rolling Stones and the Beatles and the Clash and the Who and things like that. That grew out of that early record scene coming out of New York, especially the blues. And then a similar thing happening in the 80s with the hip hop scene, but instead of it heading to London, it headed to Tokyo. And that's where Hiroshi Fujiwara fits into all that. He's a main player in bringing hip hop to Japan right here. So pretty important guy when you really think about current events and current sort of society and stuff like that. And he's got the design label Fragment Design, and because of that, he's done collaborations with Nike, and he's got another one coming out, a repeat. It's a restock, it's a retro in a way, because there are changes between the OGs and these, at least these ones. There's 2 more colorways that are rumored to come, but we haven't seen them yet. So the first thing to get into is to look at that shoe, see what's coming on June the 5th this year, this retro or restock or whatever you want to call it, reverb, retake 2.0, whatever it is you want to call it. And the basic thing, very, very simple, is the originals were mismatched, which meant that the left and the right shoes, the color placement on them were completely opposite. So if you had a white and red shoe on the left, you'd have a red and white shoe on the right. The basic color of the shoe really hasn't changed that much. It's purple and black, or black and purple, whatever you want to say. So those original, I'll try and dig out a picture actually. I don't know if I'll be able to find one, but a picture of the original Beijings and their mismatched colorway. But then this one, this new retake on it is updated without that, and you just got straight deep purples and black all across the shoe, and then that midsole in white sets off some really neat branding on the shoe. So but basically it's that purple and black all the way through, and then if you dig into that purple and black, there's a couple of really good places. I'll start with the toe and then we'll get to the back end of the shoe second, because there's branding on the back of the shoe that I want to look at. So if we start at the toe, you get a sense of those quality materials in there, and that goes back to exactly what I was saying about those classic green Dunk lows that we talked about, that reminded me of the Jordan 1 Pine Greens, and the quality quality in those classic green Dunk Lows is absolutely fire. I think they were actually SB Dunk Low Pros, if I remember rightly. And then in these guys that remind me of the Court Purples, the quality looks exactly the same as those classic greens. They're absolutely beautiful. You can see close up on the green screen here the quality of the leathers and the toe box on there, and you get a sense that there's you know, a little bit extra being put into this shoe. And if we travel back to the other end of the shoe, the heel end of the shoe, again this picture here will show you the quality of the leathers, but really most people won't be looking at that. They'll be looking at that Fragment design branding down on the bottom of the heel there, a circle with 2 lightning bolts, and that in white on the black background of the quality leathers on there above the white midsole totally works for me. The balance of colouring on there is great. I think if these guys had a purple or black midsole to match the black outsole, in fact I might as well have a look at that jet black outsole while we're talking about it, nothing in the middle branding plate. Sometimes you see that a different colour to the rest of the outsole, but jet black front to back, and then back up to what we're talking about above the white midsole. If that hadn't been white, then that white piece of branding on the back would have looked a bit lonely, just hanging there. But I think the white midsole really works well with the white little bit of branding on there. Circle, 2 lightning bolts in it. We'll come back to that because there's more on the shoe. But before we do that, very close by, you've got an extra little thing that wasn't on the OGs, which is a hit of branding text on that white midsole. Now, I don't remember exactly what it says. It's quite long, but I do think the last 2 words in it are Fragment Design. So hopefully I'll be able to show you that text that runs along the midsole there, which is an addition to the shoe, taking it up a notch. And then I did say there's the branding on the back end of the shoe there and branding in another place. Before we get to that, close by to that branding on the insoles, which we'll get to in a minute, is the top of the tongues. And we can see just like those classic greens the other day, which if I remember rightly had, I want to say it was black branding on a green tongue. You know what was green branding on a black tongue? I bet you it was green branding on a black tongue. And it's exactly the same here, well not green, but it's purple branding on a black tongue, I think. I'm remembering right. It's 2-tone branding, that's the main point, because often what you'd see is, say, a white tongue with a black branding panel and purple branding on it to give you the 3 tones, but instead of having that, you've got the 2 tones of the black and the purple on there. But that's just your standard Dunk branding. What isn't standard is what's on the insole, but instead of trying to look down into the shoe, it's better to do this right here. A shot of the insoles actually taken out. So are the outsoles? No, they're insoles. But you can see that lightning, double lightning strike in a circle branding in purple on the black insoles to sort of complement the outside branding on the shoe there. So so you've got a lot going on the shoe in terms of colour, in terms of quality, in terms of branding placement, and just in terms of it being an absolutely cracking Dunk high. Sometimes the Dunk highs don't really go as well as the lows. The lows tend to sell out very well. There was a very colourful pair of shoes, I can't remember what they were called, but they didn't sell out here in Japan. And like I said about these guys, you know, well, Dunk highs, they don't always sell out as quickly as Dunk lows do, but I think these guys might actually, if I remember rightly. They are on the sneakers app here in Japan on June 5th, I know that for a fact, but I think I remember rightly that it says draw and then the date, so there's a draw for these guys, not just the general release. So it's and usually when there's a draw, that means it's a bit special because a lot of people are going to be going after them, and you can understand why, because they're an absolutely cracking pair of shoes, and I think people will definitely be interested in them. The size run here I think is 17 centimeters to 30 centimeters, and I don't know if that's good or bad for me because I usually wear 30.5, but it depends on the shoe. For example, Adidas NMDs, I wear 29 centimeters, a whole centimeter and a half smaller than my actual foot, and I don't know about Dunk highs. I don't know what the size run is for me, and if 30 centimeters will work out for somebody with actually 30.5 centimeter feet. But the 30 centimeters is where the line stops here on June the 5th, but I don't know if it's the same elsewhere in the world, whether the drop date's the same or happening on Sneakers app, or maybe not. But I'm looking forward to this one. It's going to be a big one, June the 5th, which I think might be a Saturday. I'm shooting this one, actually now it's Saturday morning, it's 10 past midnight on Friday night, so it's actually Saturday morning. So in a week's time, these guys are going to be coming around the corner, and if you're interested, definitely get your fingers ready because you're going to have to be fast to get your hands on them. With that being said, it's time to just wrap up this video. Hopefully you appreciate that take on these Dunk high Beijings from the Fragment design line, and a little look into the guy behind them because it's Hiroshi Fujiwara, so a big tie up to Japan, and a great looking shoe. So fingers crossed, interested in getting your hands on them. Good luck, hopefully you get them. And the last thing for me to do is just wrap up this video and say the same thing that I say at the end of every single video, is that I do this every single day, and that means that you are guaranteed to see me tomorrow.